Under the drab sky of a late autumn afternoon, Samuel Desmond sat cross-legged on the cracked pavement of his small town's park. The autumn wind skimmed the surface of the pavement, rustling the last remaining leaves of the elderly oaks that lined the walking path. At 12 years old, Samuel was small for his age, with wild, sandy hair that seemed to have a life of its own, and bright hazel eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Despite the tinges of cold in the air, he wore a slightly oversized navy jacket that had seen better days, the sleeves rolled up to expose freckled forearms, still stained from the art class he took a week ago. Around Samuel swirled the familiar sounds of children laughing and playing. He watched as they chased each other, oblivious to the chilly breeze and the darker hues setting in as the sun began its descent. Samuel felt a twinge of longing in his chest. His only friend, Mia, had moved away 3 weeks prior, leaving him with an ache he could barely articulate. This sense of solitude had been compounded by the pressures at home. His father lost his job a few months back, and despite his unwavering optimism, the weight of worry visibly tugged at his parents. Feeling the hunger ripple through him, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, waxy paper bag that crinkled softly in his hands. Inside lay his last piece of bread, a thick slice of sourdough his mother had carefully packed that morning. Samuel had been saving it for later, but glanced around the park at the other children who had more than enough food to spare and felt shame blossom in his chest. "Hunger always sounds louder in the silence," he muttered, leaning back on his elbows to look up at the mottled gray sky. Just then, his attention turned to the far end of the park, where a woman in ragged clothes caught his eye. She sat beneath a crooked bench, her gnarled hands clasped tightly over her knees. Her hair was a wind-swept mess of gray, and her skin seemed like a thin parchment stretched too tight. Samuel couldn't tell her age, but her wary expression spoke of years of hardship. Old newspapers were strategically layered around her as a makeshift cushion, and a weathered backpack lay at her side. Samuel had rarely ever seen someone like her in his neighborhood. A wave of compassion washed over him, coupled with concern. He hadn't seen any food around her, and she appeared frail, almost transparent against the dull colors of the park. He hesitated for a moment, glancing down at the slice of bread resting in his hand. The thought of offering it to her, a stranger, felt monumental. What if she refused? What if she was ungrateful? As he searched her face, the corners of her lips turned upward slightly when she noticed his gaze, and he fought against the urge to look away. The flicker of a smile held power, and it pulled him towards her with an unseen thread of kindness. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice soft, yet somehow ironclad against the piercing chill. "Samuel," he replied, feeling as if the word were laden with a gravity he didn't quite understand. She nodded, an acknowledgement of sorts that seemed to break down the invisible walls between them. He felt the warmth of her sincerity nudging him forward. "What are you doing here, all alone?" I come here a lot," he stammered, glancing at the bread, the urgency in his stomach overshadowing his reservations. "I was just thinking." He looked up, surprised to see her expression affirming his thoughts. "Yeah," he replied, swallowing hard. "I was thinking about..." His eyes drifted to the slice of bread. "Would you like this?" The old woman's expression transformed, her eyes widening slightly as if he had offered her a treasure. "Oh, my dear, I couldn't possibly. You need it, right?" "Please," he insisted, his voice stronger than he felt. "You look like you need it more." For a moment, silence settled between them, layered with a depth seldom found within a fleeting connection. Finally, he steadied himself and reached out, pressing the bread into her hands. Thank you, Samuel, she whispered, genuine surprise coloring her words. You're very kind. All part of being human, I guess, he replied, feeling the flush rise to his cheeks. I just wish I had more. He tried to mask his embarrassment with a smile as she tore the crust gingerly, her fingers trembling as she placed it in her mouth. Samuel watched as she savored the first bite, her eyes closed briefly, and the tension in her face melted. It was a small gesture, but seeing her moment of contentment ignited something deep within him. Do you remember the last time you shared something? She asked, her tone teasing yet full of hope. Samuel tilted his head, furrowing his brow, struggling to remember. The idea struck him, not just of sharing the bread, but of moments he had allowed himself to feel alone, selfish, and perhaps a little lost, amidst the glee around him. I think I remember something, he said, a spark of understanding taking root. But it's not easy to feel what it feels like to give. She nodded, her gaze softening. It's true. It often takes practice to open your heart fully. The remnants of their conversation lingered in the air as Samuel rose to his feet, brushing the dirt and leaves from his jacket. I should probably go home, he said, feeling oddly lighter in spirit. Take care of yourself, okay? I will, she promised, her voice low but threaded with unshakable resolve. He felt her sincerity resonate, almost surprising him with the unexpected wisdom in her words. As Samuel left the park, he cast a last glance back at the woman who had brought life to a moment that had almost escaped him. There was a quiet magic in human connection, the kind that rippled through existence like the gentle caress of a breeze, unseen yet felt. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, infusing the town with infectious energy. Yet Samuel awoke unaware of the small miracle poised just outside his door. The crisp smell of pancakes drifted through his home, and as he stumbled down the stairway, the weight of yesterday's kindness enfolded him like a comforting blanket. His mother called out from the kitchen, "Sammy, breakfast is ready." He smiled to himself, still savoring the warmth of the woman's gratitude, blissfully unaware of how that simple act of kindness would unfold in the days to come. As he stepped outside, his heart fluttered unexpectedly, sensing the approach of change. The familiar sight of the street enveloped him, yet a sleek, dark limousine pulling up to his home cast an unusual shadow against the radiant morning light. At that moment, the air thick with unknowing promise, Samuel stood at the threshold of something larger than himself, a journey that would intertwine his life with the woman in rags and a world waiting to be discovered. Samuel stood frozen at the sight of the sleek limousine idling outside his home. The polished surface of the vehicle glimmered in the early morning light, starkly contrasting with the humble charm of their neighborhood. Curiosity wrestled with anxiety in his mind, creating a flutter in his chest. "Mom, who's here?" he called, his voice rising above the soft hiss of the wind. "Not sure, honey. Just finished breakfast," she shouted back, her tone warm and inviting as it always was. He walked past the kitchen, the sweet aroma of pancakes now replaced by an unsettling yet compelling mystique surrounding the limo. He peered through the lace curtains, straining to catch a glimpse of whoever was stepping out, his breath catching when he saw a well-dressed man in a tailored suit open the door. The stern face of the stranger seemed out of place in the morning sunlight, and as Samuel watched, he felt an inexplicable sense of foreboding. "Samuel!" His mother's voice rang through the house. "You better come eat before I eat your pancakes." He hesitated for just a moment, torn between intrigue and the comfort of a home filled with love. But the curiosity proved too strong, and he rushed towards the door just as the man began walking up the path towards them. "Good morning," the man greeted, flashing a tight-lipped smile that only deepened the intrigue surrounding him. "Is this the residence of Samuel Desmond?" Yes, that's me, Samuel replied, his voice steadying despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing in his mind. Delighted to meet you, Samuel, the man said, extending a firm hand. I'm Mr. Kincaid, an associate of someone you met yesterday. At the mention of someone, Samuel's mind flashed back to the old woman, the warmth of her smile, the tremor in her voice as she expressed her gratitude. You mean the lady in the park? He asked, his brows furrowing. Yes, indeed, Mr. Kincaid replied, his expression turning serious. I represent Mrs. Judith Thorne, who has been closely observing your kindness. Kindness? Samuel echoed, bewilderment rippling through him. What could she possibly see in him? The image of himself sharing his only piece of bread was replaying in his mind like a looping film reel. To him, it was small, insignificant. But it had obviously meant more to her, and that realization ignited a flame of emotions within him. Please, can I come inside? Mr. Kincaid asked, his eyes scanning the cozy little home Samuel loved so dearly. Sure, he mumbled, gesturing for the man to enter. The contrast between their worlds felt almost surreal. Old creaky floors welcoming polished shoes. Once inside, Mr. Kincaid took a seat at their dining table, straightening his cuffs, his expression poised but grave. I want to discuss a few things with you and your mother. Mom, Samuel called out. She emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dishcloth, her brow quirked in curiosity. Mr. Kincaid, she acknowledged, glancing at her son with a hint of concern. How can I help you? Thank you for your time, Mr. Kincaid continued, adopting a more formal tone. I'm here to speak about Mrs. Thorne's interest in Samuel and his kindness. It's inspired an unexpected opportunity for him. Samuel's heart raced, confusion crashing through him. Opportunity for what? He asked, his youthful spirit humming with intrigue, but grounded by uncertainty. Mr. Kincaid cleared his throat. Mrs. Thorne is looking for a compassionate young soul to mentor, a project she is passionate about. Judith has faced many trials in her life, but believes true kindness has the ability to impact others positively. She feels that you, Samuel, might just have the heart and spirit she's looking for. I don't understand, Samuel admitted, glancing at his mother, whose expression mirrored his uncertainty. She would like to invite you to her estate for a day to see if you'd be interested in collaborating with her on a community project, Mr. Kincaid explained. In return, Mrs. Thorne would like to offer you some valuable life lessons, opportunities that may not come your way otherwise. With me? Samuel asked, his brow knitted in disbelief. "'Cause you showed kindness when others might not have," Kincaid replied. "You took a moment to uplift someone else, even when you were in need yourself. That says a lot about who you are." Samuel was taken aback, feeling like a puzzle piece that had somehow inexplicably begun to fit into a larger picture. "But what can I do?" he wondered aloud. "Perhaps you can discover that answer in time," Kincaid said, his gaze calm yet compelling. "Would you be open to meeting Mrs. Thorne?" Samuel's heart raced at the thought. His initial impulse was to recoil, to retreat back into the world where he understood every corner of his life. But surrounding him was an instinct pulling him outwards, tinged with the hope of something more, something that could allow him to turn kindness into an entire journey. I'd like to meet her," he finally replied, nodding slowly, conviction lacing his words. "Wonderful," Mr. Kincaid said, his demeanor brightening. "Can you be ready in an hour?" Samuel nodded, understanding that something worthy was on the verge of unveiling, and all it took was the decision to step beyond the threshold of his everyday life. "Samuel," his mother said softly, "this is quite unexpected. You should think it over." "I know, Mom, but what if this can help someone?" With the acceptance of this new challenge, Samuel felt alive, His passion for growth surged, igniting a flame that had flickered for too long in solitude. An hour later, Samuel found himself inside the sleek, luxurious confines of the limousine, where the upholstery felt too soft beneath him and the atmosphere heavy with unspoken ambitions. Mr. Kincaid sat across from him, handing him a glass of clear water that sparkled in the sunlight streaming through tinted windows. First meetings can feel daunting, Kincaid stated, his voice steady, aiming to put Samuel at ease. Just remember, kindness is not just an action, it's an approach to life. Samuel nodded, absorbing the words, while a mixture of excitement and anxiety coursed through him. He recalled the warmth of the woman in the park, the grace in her smile, how a simple act of compassion had ripple effects he could barely comprehend. What kind of impact would he make in return? As they arrived at a sprawling estate framed by towering oak trees and vibrant gardens, Samuel hesitated for a moment before stepping out of the vehicle. It was stunning, breathtaking in a way he had only ever seen in movies. The driveway wound into a vast expanse of green, and the house itself stood stately, surrounded by blooming flowers, a stark contrast to his modest surroundings. As they walked toward the entrance, Kincaid talked to him about the various community projects Mrs. Thorne had undertaken over the years. Each endeavor seemed infused with purpose and heart, a testament to Judith's relentless spirit, even despite her hardship. Samuel felt the thrill of what he was about to step into, realizing this could be more than just a visit. It could turn into a transformative experience. A soft voice called out, pulling him from his thoughts. "You must be Samuel. Welcome." He turned to see an elegant woman in her 60s, her face aglow with a warmth that radiated beyond her expensive clothing. Her hair cascaded like silver silk around her shoulders, and her presence felt both enchanting and reassuring. "Mrs. Thorne?" he asked, instinctively having known. "Yes, dear boy, but please, call me Judith," she replied, reaching for his hand with an unexpected tenderness. Samuel was startled as warmth enveloped him. Her grip was gentle, yet it conveyed a strength he had never felt before. "Thank you for meeting me," Samuel managed, his words stuttered beneath the weight of her attention. "The pleasure is all mine," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You have shown kindness to a stranger at a time when she truly needed it, and I want to explore that inner brilliance of yours." Judith led him into a sunlit room filled with light and color. Vibrant murals adorned the walls, depicting hands reaching out to one another, and a table bore an array of materials for art and crafts. Instantly, Samuel felt a connection to the space. It was a testament to the art of giving. "I want to help you discover the power that lives in kindness," Judith spoke, settling into a nearby plush chair. "It is a force that can ultimately spark change in both you and the world around you." "Change?" Samuel echoed, mindful of his surroundings. "What kind of change?" "The kind that breaks down walls, connects people, and heals wounds. You've already taken the first step. Let's find where your heart leads you." Within the next hour, Judith opened up the space for Samuel to express his ideas. She prompted his imagination and offered tools and experiences that ignited creativity he didn't know existed. Together, they engaged in vibrant discussions about art, community, and developing compassion. Before long, he found himself lost in a world where kindness became a canvas upon which they could paint new possibilities. With every story Judith shared about her life, each struggle she endured, each act of kindness that transformed her world, Samuel began to see the breadth of compassion's reach. It was as if they were weaving an intricate tapestry of human experience, each thread symbolizing moments of connection that transcended the mundane. "I want to help people like you helped me," Samuel finally said, his voice quaking with determination. "What can I do?" A proud smile crossed Judith's lips. "Perhaps we can create a project together, a community festival focused on kindness. We'll introduce various activities that encourage sharing, mentorship, and the power of connection." His heart swelled at the idea. "That sounds amazing, but will people come?" In my experience, when kindness is at the core, people will come. They'll feel drawn to it. They just need a reason to gather. Each day he spent with Judith unveiled a garden of possibilities, a blossoming journey that resonated deeply with him. He began to understand the butterfly effect, a small act of kindness unleashing waves of positive influence. As days turned into weeks, Samuel transformed remarkably. He became more confident, introspective, and communicative. His natural curiosity enlarged into empathy, and he began connecting in ways he never had before. Through Judith's mentorship, he discovered the art of listening and the beauty in vulnerability. Samuel soon found himself enlisting friends from school, those from the park, the neighbors with spare time, even the elderly down the road who rarely ventured outside. Together they brainstormed art projects, compassion booths, and storytelling areas, sketching and scribbling ideas that went beyond the limits of their imaginations. Amid the whirlpool of creativity, communication, and collaboration, something magnificent began to happen in their community. The upcoming festival sparked a change palpable in the air. His fellow classmates began inviting others, forging unexpected friendships that wouldn't have blossomed otherwise. People from diverse backgrounds began to unite around the common belief in kindness, sharing stories, laughter, and vulnerabilities, the threads connecting like the colors of a unique tapestry that Samuel found himself weaving. One chilly evening, as he and Judith prepared for their final meeting before the festival, they sat in her art room, candles flickering softly, illuminating the smiles gracing their faces. "Do you know what you've done, Samuel?" Judith asked, her eyes glistening softly. "No, I mean, we've done this together," he replied, humility muddying the truth in his heart. Judith shook her head. "While it has been a joint effort, the strength to begin this journey comes from you. You took action, and with that, you've planted seeds of kindness throughout this community." Samuel was silent for a moment, reflecting deeply on her words. His eye caught a vivid mural painted on the wall, a colorful depiction of hands reaching out, with flowers blooming between them. "This mural, it reminds me of that moment I shared my bread," he said, realizing the roundness of their journey. "Everything started there." "Yes, but more importantly, it shows that a single act of kindness has multipliers beyond imagination. And now, because of you, the potential for growth and understanding is exponential." The day of the festival arrived like a wave breaking softly on the shore. The sun blazed in all her glory as families filled the park, laughter rising like bubbles in the air. Sam's heart raced not with fear but with exhilaration, the sense that the long journey had transformed not only his own existence but also forged new connections among many. As people meandered beneath canopies filled with vibrant decorations, they shared stories and crafts, reflecting joy and authenticity. Inspired by the simple yet rich experiences of kindness, children and adults relished in unabashed openness, enjoying the newfound vibrance washing through the community. Samuel caught sight of the old woman from the park, her face radiating warmth, mirroring Judith's presence. She smiled at him, a knowing look in her eyes that spoke volumes without requiring any words. The unexpected connections had rippled throughout the fabric of their lives. Samuel felt deeply grounded in this unifying experience, a tapestry that would continue to flourish long after the festival's sunset. With the help of Judith and astonishing resilience that emerged within him, Samuel had not only offered his last piece of bread, but had gifted something more profound, his heart. In that moment, he realized kindness was both a journey and destination, and he began his quest all over again, ready to continue exploring what it meant to face the world with unwavering spirit, while encouraging others to do the same. And as each sunset led to dawn, they all shone brightly, interconnected, bound by the powerful threads of compassion spun through simple, authentic acts of kindness. As Samuel stepped into the park, the sun bathed everything in a warm glow, illuminating the vibrant decorations that hung like colorful banners over the cheerful crowd. The festival was a tapestry of joyous noises, the laughter of children, the delightful chatter of neighbors reuniting, and the dulcet strings of musicians filling the air with melodies that intertwined with the sense of food wafting from various stalls. His heart raced with anticipation as he surveyed the scenes surrounding him. Everywhere he looked, people were engaged in acts of kindness, laughter shared over games, and stories told over deep-fried treats that had become festival staples. It was as if every moment pulsated with energy, binding everyone together in a tapestry of connectedness he had only dreamed of creating. "Samuel, over here!" A voice broke through the bustle. It was Mia, his childhood friend who had moved away months earlier. Surprised to see her, Samuel's heart leapt. She waved him over, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she gestured at the activities she'd participated in. "Mia, you came back!" he exclaimed, enveloping her in a tight hug, filled with an energy he didn't know he had been holding back. Her return felt like a piece of home he'd thought he'd lost forever. "I wouldn't miss it for the world. I kept hearing about your kindness festival, and I had to come see it for myself." Together, they walked toward a booth set up for art projects, where colorful paint spilled and laughter echoed alongside creative snippets of conversation. Each art piece created was accompanied by a note about what kindness meant to the artist. Samuel felt a rush of pride watching people interact, their energy reflecting the flourishing spirit he finally felt within. "I'm so impressed, Sam. You've really turned this into something special," Mia said, as she joined him in creating small murals on blank canvases, a flurry of colors reminiscent of confetti marking joyful moments. "Thanks, but it was Judith I guess who taught me to harness it all." "I really want to meet her," Mia replied with enthusiasm. Just then, a voice behind them interrupted, a rich timbre that threaded with authority. "Samuel, we need you at the main stage." It was Mr. Kincaid, donning a suit that looked as crisp as his demeanor. "Oh, all right. I'll be right there," Samuel replied, exchanging glances of curiosity with Mia, who followed him closely. As they hurried towards the stage, Samuel could feel the weight of expectation pulling at him like a tidal wave, threatening to crash just as he stood on the edge of something monumental. The community had rallied together for this moment, and amid the energy swirling around him, he felt rooted yet weighed down by a sense of responsibility. When they reached the stage, a small crowd had gathered to witness the proceedings. Colorful paper lanterns fluttered in the gentle breeze, and a backdrop filled with art contributed by festival goers glimmered under the sunlight. Judith stood alongside Mr. Kincaid, her silver hair catching the light and shining with a brilliance that felt both regal and humble. "Samuel," Judith called, her voice carrying warmth over the crowd, "we'd like for you to say a few words." The crowd turned, curiosity reflecting in every face. Samuel's knees felt like jelly, but he took a deep breath and stepped forward, gathering courage from the support he felt enveloping him. Hi, everyone," he stammered, his voice shaky but determined. "Thank you all for coming today. This started as a dream, a way to spread kindness after I shared my last piece of bread with someone who really needed it." He gestured toward the beautiful woman, sitting not too far, who was wearing a joy-filled expression. "I wanted to find a way to share that feeling with everyone here, to remind us all that kindness matters more than we know." The crowd fell silent, absorbing his words. A collective heart seemed to pulse in the air. "I've learned that kindness is like a seed. They need to be planted to grow, and they flourish when we share them with others. Let's keep this going. Let's not just make today special, but let's commit to spreading kindness every day, in every little thing we do," he finished, feeling a wave of hope coursing through him. The applause erupted like fireworks igniting the sky, and Samuel felt a warmth spread through him that surpassed anything he had known. Judith stepped in to hug him tightly as Mr. Kincaid nodded in agreement, his thoughtful eyes echoing pride. At that moment, Samuel understood that he had not only grown himself, but he had sparked something greater, the transformation of a community eager for connection. As he stepped down from the stage, the music regained its place, and dancers filled the space where he once stood, and embodying the freedom that so easily flowed through them. "You were amazing," Mia beamed, her smile brightening the path ahead. "Thanks, but it feels like everyone is amazing today," he laughed, taking her hand as they danced amid the thrumming beat. Time drifted, a sweet mix of sun and laughter encapsulating them in moments. As they moved through the festival, he noticed people beginning to start new conversations. Strangers greeting one another, sharing their stories, smiles freely exchanged. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, a hush fell over the crowd. Judging by the way they leaned in, it was clear they were eager for what was to come. Judith stood at the center once more, her presence illuminating the stage with hope as she shared the story of what had brought her to this place. "Years ago, I found myself lost. I was an old woman in rags, yet one kind gesture set me on a path that I never expected. Because of this young boy's simple act of sharing his last piece of bread, we've created a festival to celebrate kindness and connection." Judith's voice dripped with emotion, thickening in the air with every word. "But let us remember, kindness is not just an event. It's a commitment to uplift one another every single day. What we offer to our neighbors extends far beyond ourselves, reverberating through our communities, through generations, allowing hope to flourish." Samuel could see members of the audience tearing up. His mother, Mr. Kincaid, and even some of the festival goers shifted with emotion, recognizing the significance of the moment. Judith stepped aside carefully, nodding at Samuel, inviting him to share a final thought. "I grew up believing kindness was just a small, simple act, something wrapped up in gestures or gifts. But today, I learned it was growth. It changes us. It connects us," he said, grounding himself. "Let's become the change we want to see. Even a small act can create a ripple that spreads infinitely." The applause that followed felt like the rise and fall of the ocean, filling Samuel's chest until he almost felt like he might burst. His heart couldn't contain it. The crowd erupted in cheers, a chorus of voices blending together in validation of something extraordinary. As people began to disperse, quotes of kindness were exchanged and embraced. Samuel felt a sense of belonging rock through him, transcending the companionship he once yearned for so desperately. A familiar figure caught his eye amongst the crowd, the old woman from the park, her smile radiant under the glow of the festival lights. He made his way through to her, his heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly, reaching for her hands. "I wouldn't have been here without you. You truly inspired everything." "The greatest joy comes from giving, dear boy," she said, her eyes twinkling with wisdom. "And do remember, kindness begets kindness. Keep sharing your gifts. Others will catch on." "Promise I will," Samuel vowed. "I've seen the power it has." "It will transform not only you, but many others as well," she replied with a knowing smile. "Trust in it. It is what connects us all." As Samuel looked around, absorbing the silhouettes of lively conversations surrounded in kindness, he recognized that what he had created was not a festival merely rooted in one event. It was an ongoing legacy. He would work to remove the barriers between people, to seek out avenues of compassion that allowed every voice to be heard, each kindness to echo across distances that once felt unbridgeable. Later that night, as twilight blanketed the park, Judith gathered the festival team, Samuel, Mia, and even Mr. Kincaid, over to strategize how to turn this first festival into an annual needed commitment for the community. Ideas surfaced, suggestions ebbing and flowing into a plan that felt tangible, exciting. I want each of us to continue finding ways to spread kindness, not just today, but every day, Samuel said enthusiastically, his heart pulsating with conviction. Yes, it's a spark, Judith smiled. Together, let's cultivate this notion, making it bigger than ourselves. Through the night, the team worked tirelessly under the twinkling stars, sketching frameworks for the upcoming projects, initiatives that would carry whispers of kindness into local schools, public spaces, and eventually, new homes. As they closed their meeting, Samuel felt a surge of determination within him, a fierce desire to recognize this journey as the beginning of something magnificent. He imagined what it would feel like to have that ripple encompass the entire town, lighting every dark corner. A few weeks later, while coordinating the second festival, Samuel decided to write a letter to the local newspaper. In it, he shared the purpose of the festival and the lessons learned, emphasizing the idea that acts of kindness are integral to building connections. He challenged every reader to take part in uplifting others with the hope it might illuminate the hearts lost in solitude. Weeks turned into months, and Samuel found himself ensconced in a community that thrived off connection. With his mother's cooking classes, Judith's art courses, and Mr. Kincaid's enlightening talks, they formed new partnerships that intertwined seamlessly with the spirit of kindness Sam had breathed life into. Before long, stories began pouring in, parents rejoicing in newfound friendships fostered by the festival, children actively participating in acts of service, and even newcomers regularly spotted joining the gatherings with enthusiasm. The second annual Kindness Festival blossomed, drawing crowds from neighboring towns. Samuel surrounded by laughter that ignited the joyous spirit he had rekindled in himself. As the sun began to set, lighting up the sky with a fiery orange glow, he spotted the old woman from the park at the back of the crowd. A rush of warmth filled his heart, resonating with the belief he now held dear as his legacy of kindness birthed new stories and beautiful connections. That evening, as fireworks lit up the night sky, Samuel stood surrounded by his friends, family, and community. A cohesive family forged through compassion. He smiled broadly, a brilliant manifesto of hope, knowing every story forever shared was a reminder that kindness was an infinite cycle, where one shared act could catalyze a movement. Even though the old woman in rags had long departed, the fabric of their connection lived on in him, threading memories into every night spent celebrating kindness together time and again. All at once, on that breathtaking summer night, he found himself convinced that kindness was not merely a lesson learned, but a way of living, an anthem of connection he would carry forward for life. In the hearts of those gathered, the energy flourished a shared promise, echoing Judith's wisdom, yielding the knowledge that giving away bits of oneself, moment by moment, through kindness, would teach them to carry transformative power into the world that needed each and every heart to shine. And so, with the flickering lights illuminating the dark, with the rippling surprises of tomorrow just outside the boundaries of their hearts, every one of them knew, deep down, that the story of kindness would continue forward, the ripples embracing every soul, craving connection, resonance, and warmth.